All right, welcome everyone to SAMA's 2021 Annual General Meeting. My name is Erwin Blank. I'm the CEO of SAMA, and I'm going to be the host for this virtual meeting for SAMA. Now, this is an opportunity for us to look back on 2020, to give you a sense of what good things happened in the year, what challenges that we faced, and also to give you a chance to ask questions of us about SAMA and the assessment system. Before I get too far into the presentation and the agenda, though, I want to give you a little bit of information about just how we've set up this annual general meeting. First off, we're using Zoom for this, and all attendees are muted by default. So once we get to the question and answer session, which will occur after the presentations, then what we would ask you to do at that time is to raise your hand if you would like to ask a question about anything that you've heard in the presentations, or perhaps an issue that you came to the annual general meeting with that you would like to ask us about. You can just raise your hand, and one of our technical support folks will identify you in the order that the hands are raised, and we will unmute you and give you a chance to ask your question directly. Or else you can use the question and answer function on Zoom to actually type in any questions or comments that you have. And you can do that while our presentations are going on, or you can wait till the question and answer session to type in your questions at that time. There's also a chat feature. So if you're having an issue that you want to communicate with our tech support team or our panel, you are welcome to use that chat feature, and they will get it and they will communicate things to us as necessary. As well, if you lose sound, if your video freezes up, if for whatever reason one of the functions with this Zoom meeting is not working for you, you can email our support group that is the technical brains behind our presentation at support@webinarsolutions.ca. Okay, now on with the session. The Zoom screen that you should be seeing for the annual general meeting has three different formats depending on how you're viewing this particular meeting. If you're using a laptop or a desktop, you will see the features that I was just talking about, raising your hand or using the chat function or using the Q&A or question and answer session in the bottom center of your screen. If you're watching this from an iPhone, it will take up the bottom portion of your screen. And if you're watching this from a tablet, you'll see those same features up in the top right of your screen. And you can just click on them to raise your hand or not. And please don't do it just to practice, because I suspect it may get our tech folks moving a little bit early. But when it does come time for you to ask some questions, then at that time, please do raise your hand or type something into the Q&A function. We have one resolution for this annual general meeting. It will be held and dealt with at the end of the session today. And we'll go through more of the details about just how that process is going to work when we get to the resolution. But I did want to tell you that we have an online voting platform that we will utilize for this. Everyone who was signed up and registered as a voting delegate will get a special link from the application that we are utilizing, and the name on the email you will get at the time it comes to vote will be from Election Buddy. And one of the things you'll need to look for at that time is that email from Election Buddy, and it will include in it a link that you can click on. That'll take you to the resolution, and you'll be asked the question about whether you support or do not support the resolution. And we will give you 10 minutes to vote at that time. So we're going to give a fair bit of time for you to vote and consider your vote. And we will receive those votes as soon as you place them. But we will wait till the end of the 10-minute period, and then we'll report on the results at the end of that period. As per normal with resolutions, there will be an opportunity for the municipality that's brought it forward to speak to it. There will be an opportunity provided for anyone who has comments for or against the resolution to speak to it. We'll be following fairly standard rules, with each of the speakers given 3 minutes to bring their points forward, and each individual speaker having a maximum of 2 times at the mic through the process. Normally with our resolutions, we don't get too much back and forth on that, but if that does occur, those are some of the rules. And again, I'll go over that again when we get to the resolution section at the end of the meeting. Our agenda for this meeting was to open with greetings from the Minister of Government Relations, followed by Myron Knaffel, our board chair, providing an annual report from the board of directors. After that, I'll take the floor and provide you with the CEO update and progress report for 2020. Todd Treslan, our Managing Director for Assessment Services, will step up following me to give you the operational update for SAMA. And then Matthew Ratch, our Managing Director of Finance, will provide you an update on our financial situations and reviewing the key items from our 2020 audited financial statements. We will then open the floor for questions and answers. So any questions that you have that may come up as we go through our various presentations, or any questions that you may have brought to the meeting, you are more than welcome to bring them forward again by raising your hand, and we'll unmute you and let you speak to your question, or by typing your question in using the Q&A function. The last section of the meeting is on resolutions. That's when we will deal with the one resolution we did receive from the arm of McKillop. So moving to the first agenda item, I'm sorry to have to start off by saying that unfortunately, the Honorable Don McMorris was called away and was unable to make today's session. So in his place, he has asked that a copy of his presentation that he was going to make, his comments, be emailed to all of the meeting attendees. And that information either will be on its way shortly or perhaps has already been sent to you. So the Honorable Don McMorris does send his regrets. I can say that just from our perspective, Minister McMorris, we're very fortunate to have him as our Minister of Government Relations. He's a long-time elected representative. He was originally elected, I believe, back in 1999 from Indian Head, and he served in multiple portfolios. He has a wealth of experience in government, ranging right up to the deputy premier level. So we are very fortunate to have someone with his skill and caliber as our minister, and we've appreciated having him here. And I know from his comments that he really had wished he was able to stand here in front of you in person and deliver his own presentation, but such is not to be. So I will move right on to the second part of our agenda, which is the annual report from our board of directors. And that annual report will be delivered by our SAMA board chair, Myron Knaffel. And Myron is also a person with substantial experience, certainly with the assessment system and with SAMA. He's been on our board since 2008. Just to back up a little bit, though, he was born and raised on a farm just outside of Watson. And he continues to reside in Watson to this day with his wife, Lori. He was a business owner that recently sold his business in Watson. He had the Napa Auto Parts and the gas station in Watson for many years. He has a wealth of municipal experience. He's been a councillor and a mayor, and I believe he sat on their local board of revision at one time. And he's been involved in quite a number of different regional initiatives as well over the years. Since 2017, Myron has been our SAMA board chair, and I can say we're very fortunate to have Myron in that role, leading the overall organization. So with that, I will turn the floor over to Myron, and I believe we're going to be loading up the PowerPoint presentation, which is coming up next on the next slide. And Myron, I don't know if you've been unmiked or unmuted, but if you have been, please feel free to start anytime, and I will move the slides for you when on your say-so.
Okay, thank you, Erwin. You can hear me, can you?
We can hear you fine.
Okay, good. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And I would first of all, like Erwin said, unfortunately, the minister couldn't be with us here today, but we did receive his email and his greetings, and we thank him for that. And of course, we also thank the minister and the ministry for the support we've received over the years, financial and moral support. A big part of our organization depends on what goes on at the Ministry of Government Relations. And along with that, I'd also like to say thank you to all of the ministry staff that we deal with constantly on a daily basis almost, and they're just a pleasure to work with. And it really we couldn't do our job if it wasn't for the support and direction from the staff at the Ministry of Government Relations. So we certainly do appreciate all their contributions to our organization. I'm Myron Knaffel, and I chair the board of directors for SAMA. And I'd like to welcome everyone here this afternoon for joining us on this virtual AGM. Our last AGM was only about 6 months ago in October of 2020. And of course, that was moved from from April of 2020 because of COVID. It snuck in on us, and all of a sudden things weren't going the way we had planned all year. So we kept delaying that, thinking we could have a general meeting in person, but it just didn't play out that way. So we had a virtual meeting in October. And the reason that we're having another one so close to that one now is just basically to realign our schedule and get us back into the April schedule. And so hopefully in April of 2022, a year from now, we'll have the option of being able to meet in person again, which would really be nice, because we certainly do appreciate the feedback we get from everyone, and that seems to be a lot. We get a lot more feedback when we are in person, without a doubt. And so, but you know, on the other hand, we've had really good success here. We've been getting good numbers coming to the virtual meetings also. So I guess what we'll have to do maybe for next year is have a look at maybe doing a hybrid type meeting where you can have the option of coming in person or possibly meeting us online. So we'll have to see how that goes. But anyway, thank you for being here today. My report will be fairly concise because Erwin and Todd will cover most of the issues that arise. But I would like to point out some of the results of our 2020 performance report for SAMA. I think it shows that your investment in SAMA over the past few years has definitely paid off. About 7 years ago, we made a lofty request for some heavy financing to make some major changes to SAMA in the areas of technology and procedures. We promised these changes would lead to better services from SAMA, mainly more yearly inspections, translating to a fairer system, and capture some dollars left on the table from years of reinspection neglect. The request asked for an investment of money over 4 years with no return until the 5th year. Now that takes a lot of faith from any investor, and we thank you for that support and are pleased to say that the results so far are proving to be worthwhile. On the first slide, you can see the annual property reviews. Now this shows the total inspections, including maintenance and re-inspections. And even with COVID in 2020, we were able to hit 117,000 inspections. That'll be the 3rd year that we've reached our goal of surpassing 100,000 inspections each year. I should mention that it would not have been possible to do this in 2020 without the technology changes. We are able to transfer to working from home fairly easily with our mobile hardware. Of course, I can say fairly easy on my part, but a huge thanks to our management and staff for making the transition so seamless and achieving the results they did. The next slide shows the tax gains from the inspections. This slide shows an approximate tax revenue gain of $145 million by 2020 from the combined maintenance and re-inspections done. This is calculated by using an average mill rate across the province for municipal and education taxation. Keep in mind, these revenue increases accumulate year after year. The next slide is a property re-inspection reviews. This slide separates the re-inspection numbers from the maintenance completed. You can see the huge gains in these numbers. This is important for 2 reasons. It required to get our goal of re-inspecting every product or every property in the province every 12 years or less if we can work it out to that. And secondly, it's a great help in making the tax base more fair in every municipality. Before, some of these properties had not been looked at for up to 30 years. The next slide, the on-time delivery of maintenance. Another goal was to provide better service when it came to the delivery of maintenance numbers every year. Numbers are improving after the disaster we had in 2017, but this is a work in progress, and we strive to improve these numbers every year. And as some of you know, it's a little tougher to hit the numbers that we're trying to hit in the reval years. And I know some of you are having some issues this year, and Todd will probably be addressing that a little bit later. And but you know, we'd like you to know that we take that seriously, and we're trying to improve that every year, from year to year, that we want to get that so that we can deliver those numbers as if it was in an ordinary year. The next slide is a property assessment appeals. Unfortunately, this is one chart I'd like to see going the other way. Professional appellants are constantly trying to find ways to save money for their clients. And we don't see the number of appeals going down in the future. However, with the SMB starting to get caught up, and with new rules coming for the Board of Revisions, we hope the process will move along more smoothly. Although we have been successful in the appeals lately, in many of the appeals lately, it still costs a lot of money, especially when it moves into the courts and requires expensive lawyers. As an example, last year, we spent about $528,000 on legal fees. The next slide shows the operating costs, the agency operating costs. Our costs have gone up, per property has gone up slightly over the past 5 years, but still remains the lowest in Canada, and hopefully is still a good deal for our clients. The next slide, our workforce turnover. Of course, none of the improvements of the organization are possible without buy-in from our employees. Our staff has been outstanding when it comes to achieving the objectives we have laid out. A 3.7% rate of a staff turnover in 2020 shows our staff is dedicated to SAMA. And also the next slide, which is the employee work absent, is also an indication of staff dedication and participation in employee absentee days. And as you can see, at about 7.2, even in a COVID, 7.2 days, even in a COVID year, you can see that it rates very highly when you compare it to the Canadian average of 15, or even the Saskatchewan average of 12.5 days. So as you can see, the numbers seem to be going in the right direction. This, of course, never means the time comes when we can slack off. With your input and direction, we will try to continually improve the service delivered to you, our clients. Now, in closing, I should just mention that we have 2 new board members on the SAMA board. We have Randy Golden from the city of Yorkton, and she replaces Al Heron and representing SUMA. We have Richard Marlowe, the RM of 76 and he lives in Pontex, and he replaces Murray Purcell and representing SARM. And also re-elected from SARM is our longtime vice chair, John Wagner. And the other 3 remaining board members is Don Luning from Moose Jaw, representing SUMA, and Jim Angus and Audrey Trombley representing the province. So with that, I will turn it back over to Erwin for his CEO report.
Thank you very much, Myron. I appreciate that update. And okay, this is my opportunity to talk to all of you about just how last year went, and to go over some concepts that I think are important. I also want to take a little bit of time to talk about some of the assessment trends that we're seeing here in 2021. When we compare the new 2021 assessments, the final ones that are either have been delivered or are being delivered to all of our municipalities and the independent assessment service providers with the same numbers from last year. What kind of final trends have shaken out of the whole process? So I want to spend a little bit of time talking to you about that. But my focus really is going to be on last year and how things went, what went well, and what didn't go well after covering a couple of basics. Again, I'm Erwin Blank. I've been the CEO for SAMA since being hired for this position late in 2016 or 2006. I'm sorry, lost 10 years there quickly. And I am just coming up near 40 years on the job. I started originally as an assessment appraiser out of Saskatoon, and I've been in a variety of positions in the organization over the years, culminating in the CEO role, which I'm very privileged to be able to hold. Our purpose as an organization and the purpose of the assessment system, the reason we're here is because the work that we do as an agency, that our board does, and overall governance of the agency, that assessment service providers do in delivering assessments, provides a financial foundation that is the major single source of revenue for local governments across Saskatchewan. The assessment base, which adds up to over $265 billion this year, is used to provide over $2.1 billion in revenue to local governments across Saskatchewan. That revenue is utilized for the essential services required to sustain and maintain our communities across the province. It is revenue that local councils have full control over in terms of making decisions about how much revenue they want to draw from the assessment base and where they want to expend that revenue to ensure that whether it's for police or fire protection or snow removal or grading of the roads or garbage removal or parks and recreation or anything associated with sustaining and maintaining your communities. You can draw revenue from this assessment base in order to help assist and support and sustain your communities. Over $1.4 billion was provided from the assessment base to municipalities, and that figure is over a year old already. I suspect the new number is higher than that. In addition to that, the assessment system provides over $735 million in funding for education. That's close to 40% of the operational funding required for kindergarten to grade 12 education. And you can imagine what our education system would look like without that funding. It would be decimated. So we're very privileged and proud to be able to support the overall assessment system through our board of directors who are charged with governance for setting the rules and procedures for all jurisdictions in Saskatchewan, and to be able to actually deliver assessment services to our client municipalities. And SAMA provides assessment services to 757 of the 761 total municipalities in Saskatchewan today. 4 municipalities, Saskatoon, Regina, Prince Albert, and Swift Current, provide for their own assessment services, but they all have to follow the formulas and procedures and processes that are established by our board of directors, and that we all are subject to the same standards in all jurisdictions in the province. Our mission is all about assessments within the assessment and tax system. If you look at other components of the assessment and tax system, like provincial tax policies, that is the responsibility of the provincial government in government relations. And local tax policies are the responsibility of local governments across the province. But what SAMA does is establish, and what we want to do is develop and regulate and deliver a stable and cost-effective assessment system that meets the criteria you see set out here. And whenever we look at new assessment policies, we measure them against that criteria to determine, are we moving closer to meeting these objectives or further away? And if the answer is further away to more than or to any of these objectives, those policy changes have a real tough road to hoe and rarely make it through the various cuts of consultation and review at our board and stakeholder level. So our overall responsibilities as an agency include governing the overall assessment system. That's our board of directors that has that responsibility. Providing assessment services to 757 of the 761 municipalities, providing an information database, and we have a broad-based database of market information and assessment information across all jurisdictions, Providing quality assurance, ranging from right when the work is initially getting done to when assessment roles are delivered and posted to confirm that the assessments placed on those roles are done in compliance with legislation. As well, we're responsible to provide information and communications to government and our stakeholders, assessment stakeholders across the province, and of course, all of our clients and the public. And we've also taken it on ourselves to continually look for ways to innovate as an organization, those we see as key responsibilities. Our mandate for what we do is set out in the Assessment Management Agency Act, and it contains a long list of responsibilities that the agency has been provided and given and needs to deliver. But in addition to that, our board, in consultation with our funding stakeholders from SUMA, SARM, and the province, have established a series of strategic directions that have been guiding us over the last number of years. The first is that we want to make sure that we're delivering a service and providing a value and charging for that service in a way that gains the support of all of our clients and stakeholders. We want to continue to be your assessment service provider of choice. And without that, anything else we could promise or try to deliver would not be successful. We also recognize that as part of being able to do that, we need to continually be looking at how we can simplify and streamline our processes to improve our efficiency and our effectiveness. We adopted the lean business process philosophy back in 2008, and we continue to utilize it as an organization going forward. It's become part of who we are and what we do. A number of years ago, and Myron mentioned this, we adopted an aggressive policy to bring in new technology, to change our business processes, to simplify our valuation models, and to put it all together in an effective way so that we could double or more than double our ability to inspect properties without having a substantive increase in our staff in that period of time. And we've worked on that for quite a number of years, and we continue to focus in this area. We've had great success, frankly, since 2018. Myron touched on the numbers that we were able to do. We are now capable of doing more than double the inspections that we could back when we started this process, going back to 2012 and 2013. So thank you to all of our municipal clients and to the province and everyone who has stood behind us and allowed us to develop these new capabilities and deliver on them. And finally, we provide a professional service. We will not be successful over the long term if we do not take time to focus as well on our staff and provide them the mentoring and coaching and training necessary to deliver on the commitments that we've all made to you, our clients. And certainly this last year, and I'll speak more to this in a moment, has been a challenging one with all the COVID situations that is going on. And this is another area where we've really had to double down in terms of providing necessary support for all of our employees as they continue to move forward to deliver on our commitments in an ever-changing and challenging environment. So when we started at the beginning of 2020, we actually thought, well, we had the wind at our backs. We thought we've got our new system in place. We've kind of converted ourselves to be a mobile workforce from an inspection point of view. And we were moving forward to meet our objectives. We just came off of 2 quite successful years. And we came in with some confidence into the year that we would have a nice tailwind to sail with here through the course of the year. In March of last year, the winds changed. Not just for us, but everybody at that time when we got the news that in fact the COVID situation was more than a foreign virus that we could watch on the international news. It was now a pandemic that was causing our entire economy to move into a lockdown mode. And that affected SAMA as it did every other business in terms of having to change the way we did our work. We were fortunate, frankly, because our revenue continued, but we also recognized that given that, the objectives we set for ourselves need to continue as well. There's no rationale for getting a pass on the year because of the challenge that we faced. We were also fortunate that by moving to our new technology over the previous 4 years or 5 years, we had positioned ourselves to be able to shift from working in the office to working from home over the course of 1 to 2 weeks without really losing that much in terms of our inspection capacity and effectiveness to do our work. So that worked very much in our favor. And we ended up kind of navigating through the changing environment over the next number of months as things changed on a pretty well daily basis for a while, and certainly on a weekly basis. And communicating with our staff every week about just how our job is changing for that week and how we need to adjust the way we do our work. Our staff, to their credit, were managed to tack into the wind whenever it changed and continue to move forward to meet our objectives. And as I'll note here, we did come through it successfully, albeit not following the path we had initially set for ourselves at the beginning of the year. So at the beginning of 2020, these were the objectives we set for ourselves. The province had stepped up and provided some additional funding for SAMA to hire additional staff for the first time in a decade in 2019. And they had provided that money saying, this is earmarked for you to add additional inspection capacity. Our previous objective had been to do at least 100,000 property reviews. We raised that bar to 110,000 property reviews in recognition of the 7 additional staff we were able to hire the previous year. That was what we started here. And we also recognized we needed to deliver our 2021 preliminary values to government and to our clients in a timely fashion. And we wanted to improve the quality of that product through the process. We expected we would get over 2,000 appeals. We wanted to make sure they were handled respectfully and professionally. And we also saw appeals building up at the highest court level, the Court of Appeal. At that point, we had over 12 appeals at the higher courts. And these, as Myron has mentioned, these are very complex, lawyer against lawyer kind of appeals, very expensive, running into the tens of thousands of dollars per appeal. But we wanted to make sure we provided adequate technical support for our legal counsel for those. We brought in some new technology that allows us to automate a lot of the routine processes that we used to do by hand in the past. And we wanted to start putting that into practice in 2020. We also, on the research side, wanted to move forward and do a comprehensive review of our oil and gas model and the pipeline and our pipeline model. In addition to that, we also wanted to look at our agricultural land productivity model, and we created a partnership with the University of Saskatchewan to do that. The board also was looking ahead to say, is where we're spending our time matching up with how we charge our client municipalities? They wanted us to look at that. And as a number of you would probably note, some of us are not getting any younger, and the board has kind of recognized that and said we also need to have a plan in place for succession planning to build up those who will come after us so the organization can continue to move forward successfully over the long term. Everything that you see here that is outlined in blue or purple, depending on how your screen shows it up, we actually feel we were successful in those areas. The areas that we were not successful in, or as successful in, was in delivering preliminary values to our clients. We wanted to deliver preliminary values to the cities by June 30th. We did not do that. And we wanted to deliver preliminary values to all of our client municipalities by September 1st. And I believe we delivered about 2/3 of our preliminary values to our clients. And one of the reasons for that, and number one, I know that has caused you guys some hardships, and that continues to this day. But one of the things we found is we have been successful at our inspection processes and those kind of things working remotely. But some of the things we naturally did in an office environment, working across the table from each other, like more complex market analysis where you're sharing results and alternatives and talking amongst yourselves and moving forward to a successful conclusion. Some of the things we could do in minutes or hours in that process is now, as everyone was remote and not communicating virtually all the time, seemed to take days and weeks in some cases. And it really did slow down our ability to complete the final components of our revaluation work. And frankly, that has moved right into this year and resulted in some delays in delivery of the final revaluation numbers to our clients. I know Todd will speak to that a little bit further here in his presentation, but certainly we recognize that. We recognize we're not delivering to our clients' expectations, and we've still got lots of work to do in that area moving forward to improve that for you. Just before I get into trends, I just want to mention that our system, our assessment system, is what you call an ad valorem system. And what that means is the assessments are supposed to reflect the value of those properties as of a particular point in time. And in Saskatchewan, we have a base date that is considered a retrospective or historical base date, and it is updated once every 4 years. Now, we have a whole series of processes we follow to determine the assessed values, but at bottom, what we're trying to accomplish is to determine assessments that reflect the average value of those properties as of that particular point in time. Now, from 2015 to the end of 2019, the property assessments, if you looked at your 100% values, were supposed to reflect the average value of that kind of a property as of January 1, 2015. Once every 4 years in legislation, we are asked to update all values to reflect a more current valuation base date. This year in 2021 is that year in 4. And this year, we're moving all the values up to reflect a more current valuation base date of January 1, 2019. So the physical data that is on our system that we use to determine our assessments, that changes from year to year as we do maintenance at the request of municipalities and collect new data on upgrades, basement finish, new houses, new subdivisions, all the like. We're continually adding that. But the rates we apply to that remain based on that historical base date. And once every 4 years, we take the same physical characteristics, we look at more up-to-date sales information, cost information, and we establish new assessments that reflect the more current valuation base date. So your new 2021 numbers should be a reflection, a reasonable reflection, the value of those properties as of January 1, 2019. And again, we're reflecting the 4-year change in market. So what happened in that 4-year period? This is an overall view of the trends comparing the 2021 100% assessed value with the 2020 100% assessed value, all else being equal. Now, starting on the far right, you'll see that this revaluation is different from many that we've had in the past, and that the overall changes across the province in that 4-year period from 2015 to 2019, those 2 base dates, was not extreme. It was relatively modest, an overall increase of 6%. The numbers on this chart, anything that's above 1 means if you compare the total assessments for that property category, in this case, all assessments for all jurisdictions in Saskatchewan in 2021, with those same total assessments from 2020, there's a 6% increase overall. But you can see moving from left to right on this chart that does vary depending on the category of property. If you look at residential or multifamily residential, which are rental apartments, they actually decreased in value on average across the province by 6% in the case of residential and 7% in the case of rental apartments on a provincial average basis. Seasonal residential held their own at 1. In other words, overall in the province, they're relatively flat over the 4-year period. Agricultural land is the strongest area in terms of the overall average selling price. Provincial selling prices of agricultural land increased by 25% for arable land and by 21% for pasture land. And in looking at numbers after the January 1, 2019 base date, frankly, the agricultural land sector has continued to increase in value after the base date. The commercial property sector went up, and we've broken it out by more categories than what we have tax classes for. I'll show you the tax class changes in the upcoming slide. But the commercial category, these are the first category, these are the market value assessment commercial properties that are in that category. And they've increased an average of 8% across the province. So substantially more than the residential and multifamily residential and seasonal residential, a little less than agriculture. Oil and gas sector, and these are done primarily by the cost approach, and they're regulated, as is agricultural land and the other categories to the right, mines, pipelines, railways, and elevators. That's the largest elevators. Mines increased, oil and gas increased by 12%, mines close to 10%, pipelines by 17%, and railways are up 26%. Grain elevators up 22%, all substantially higher than what the increase was for the residential side of things. Now, I'll come back to this in a moment, but the province, when Cabinet looked at these changes and looked at what has changed in the market after January 1, 2019, our assessments are based on anything that occurred up to January 1, 2019, but the values do not and cannot reflect any changes that occurred after that valuation base date. The province, when they established their new tax percentages of value, looked at the changes for the commercial sector writ large, and they said, there's going to be quite a shift from residential to commercial if we just let this flow through. And given the situation over the last year or years in the case of the oil sector, but broadly across the commercial industrial sector, they made the decision to mitigate some of those shifts from 100% by changing the percentage of value used to calculate the taxable assessments from 100% to 85%. Now, we weren't part of their decision-making process. We weren't privy to all the rationale, but we can show you, how the results shake out. So this is the actual property tax class category. So you'll see some of the categories are grouped. Commercial now includes some of the industrial properties such as oil and gas and heavy industrial. Pipelines and railways have their own separate classification. Grain elevators have their own separate classification. And the other categories are the same as what we had looked at before. So you can see how the trends vary again. Again, very similar for everything to the ag land to the left, and slightly different, but well above 1 for commercial, pipeline, and elevators. So when you apply the percentages of value, so this is 100% assessed value to 100% assessed value trends. Here's what happens when you apply the new percentages of value in terms of the impacts. And here's what the new percentages are. Agricultural land continues to be assessed at the lowest percentages of value of all the categories. Pasture land at 45% of its value. So that means a pasture land with 100% assessed value has a $45,000 taxable assessment. Other agricultural or arable land is at 55%. Residential, multifamily, and seasonal residential are at 80%, or were, I should say, in 2017, and continue to be. Commercial, elevator, and railways were at 100%. So if you had a $100,000 oil and gas well, if you will, it had a taxable assessment of $100,000. Same thing with a store or warehouse and the like, or a grain elevator and railway and pipeline. The province has changed that to 85%, which brings it a little bit closer to the residential side, still well above the agricultural category. The impact of that is as follows. This is the taxable assessment, comparing taxable assessment to taxable assessment across the piece. The residential, seasonal, multifamily are very close to what was reported before. There's some differences just due to application of different types of exemptions, but very close. Similar with agriculture. But in the commercial side, you can see now the categories, now that 85% has been applied, their trends now are very similar to residential, seasonal, and multifamily. Essentially, they've brought things in line. So that if you have a municipality that's supplying a uniform mill rate, essentially there won't be a large shift between residential and commercial. Now, agricultural continues to be rated a bit higher this time because of its strong market. But again, they had the lowest percentage of value to begin with. So that's just a quick synopsis of. I know a lot of the administrators received more information on the trends yesterday, so I won't belabor this point. But I thought it was important to cover as part of our overall review, given that this was a revaluation year and these questions may come up. I've talked about overall provincial averages, and that gives the impression things are, if you're in residential property, you should expect a decrease of 6 or 7%. I want to show this to indicate that's not the case, because each municipality is its own entity, if you will. Each local municipality tells its own market story. And what this shows is, yes, the average change for residential property may be a decrease of 6% or 7% for taxable assessments. But if you look in certain parts of the province, and if you look down to the southeast corner, where that's the oil and gas sector that's really struggled over the last number of years, you'll see some blue dots. Those represent individual urban municipalities and the average increase or decrease in those municipalities when you compare 2021 assessments to the previous ones. They're decreasing substantially more than the provincial average. And that's because their market was substantially softer than the provincial average. Our objective is to appropriately reflect what the new 2019 values are in our assessments relative to what the values were as of January 1, 2019. Now, if you look further north, you get into some of the Lake Country and elsewhere, or in some other areas where maybe a new industry moved into a town, and that some of those things that are showing up as red, the assessments in those communities have actually increased, in this case by as much as 40% or more in some cases. In a small community that may have got a new industry in it, breathed some life into the community, and the market has risen substantially as a result of it. Our job is to try to accurately reflect that change. So as local municipal representatives, you need to be aware not just of the overall provincial level, which is important for education tax shifts, but what's happening in your local municipality. And when you go into your local municipality, there are also shifts that occur within your municipality, and that's natural. It's part of the overall dynamics of market changes over periods of time. And again, this is a 4-year period of time that's being recognized. In this case, this is the city of Yorkton residential property. And you can see on the left-hand side, the residential median is actually 0.88, which means residential property on average in Yorkton decreased more than the provincial average by 12% in total. And the provincial average again was 0.994. All the properties that show up as yellow are essentially at that level within plus or minus 10%. Whereas the ones that show up as orange, they actually held their value this time around, maybe a little better neighborhoods, maybe larger lots, and land values increased more than improved properties. Whatever the reason is, will be the story of that municipality. And as councillors, you should if you haven't already done this at the preliminary value level, you should familiarize yourself with where the shifts are. And if you have questions, ask our local assessment appraiser for some of the rationale behind some of those changes. Same thing for Weyburn in this case. You can see Weyburn is in that southeast area that had showing up as blue dots before because they were decreasing more than the provincial average by a substantive amount. The average residential property in Weyburn, this assessment cycle is actually going down by 21%. All the properties that show up in yellow are in a very close range around that. But even in that community, there's some newer neighborhoods, perhaps more market demanded properties that are showing up as orange or red that have held their value. And in this community, just holding your value makes you almost an outlier in that community, but there are some. So again, each community is its own story, if you will, in terms of what the local market has done. And you should take some time to familiarize yourself and ask us questions about those changes, just to make sure you're aware of what has happened. All right, I just want to, before I close here, I just want to talk about a couple or three current challenges that we have as an organization. And certainly I've already mentioned the COVID situation. I was very proud of our staff and how they've handled all of the changes through 2020 and continue to move forward and meet our objectives. They've done a fantastic job. But I can tell you, as we're now past a year from when we first started locking down, now we're looking at 400 days plus, since the whole process of kind of locked in different levels. This is open, now this is closed. Now you can go on site, now you can't go on site. Now you should work from home. Now you can come back to the office. All of that changing throughout the course of the year is really starting to negatively influence our staff. We're starting to see it now. They're starting to kind of wear down, if you will. And frankly, we're also seeing it in the public mood in some areas. Whether you call it COVID fatigue or however you want to put that, it's starting to have an impact. Unfortunately, we're noticing it. So hopefully, with vaccines rolling out, the end is in sight, and we'll soldier through to the end. And we did notice that working remotely, we're very effective in many things we do, but the area of analysis and more complex work of that nature suffered. And we slowed down in that area, and that has hurt our clients and our ability to deliver when you wanted it. We've done better than 2017, but as Myron said, that's not exactly a high bar to cross over. And we're definitely not where we wanted to be, and we hope to do better, frankly. One other thing that's very serious, and it's increasing, is that the volume of appeals at the Court of Appeal and Court of Queen's Bench level, this is the highest level of appeals on points of law, have increased to over 16 appeals now. And actually, we got a decision just in the last day. Thank goodness we won one of these 16. It was dealing with the depreciation rates on oil and gas wells across the province, and we were successful. Our manual was upheld, and the way we established depreciation rates was supported by the courts. But every one of these appeals has the potential to have broad ramifications. And some of these go back to 2017, going back 4 years now. On average, the courts have really slowed down in their ability to make these decisions, and we're suffering as a result of it. And so have our clients, because when the decisions are made, we will need to revisit our current practices and may need to make some mid-course adjustments in this reevaluation because of those Court of Appeal decisions. It'll be expensive, it'll be time-consuming for our clients and for ourselves, and potentially disruptive, depending on the decisions that come through those Court of Appeals. there's nothing we can really do to manage it. We can't limit people choosing to appeal to that level. And as our economy continues to struggle, more and more businesses are taking that approach. Just as a drowning person will reach out to anything they can. If they get tax agents telling them there's a chance you can win if you take it high enough, they're in such straits that they're saying yes now, where years ago they wouldn't have said yes, and it's resulting in a real challenge for us. We are now working on some very substantial research work for 2025, including an update to our pipeline valuation model, our oil and gas model, and our productivity model. And we're going to be working with our stakeholders and our advisory committees here over the next number of months to finalize those changes. And we'll be sharing those results again with everyone on our advisory committee and communicating them out to all of our stakeholders as that work is done and completed. And that takes me to the end of my presentation. I'm happy to turn the floor over now to Todd Tressland. He's our Managing Director for Assessment Services. He's been on the job for 32 years now, and I think he's coming on the near side of starting his 33rd year in the next month or so, which makes him a relative junior candidate on the team. But I'm kidding, but he brings a wealth of experience to the job. And as they often say, if you need something done, give it to a busy person. Todd is that. Besides taking on the leadership role for our largest division in the organization, him and his father managed to farm a few thousand acres on the side and do it very successfully as well. And with that, I'll turn the floor over to Todd. Todd, please.
Well, thank you very much, Erwin. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here today. I think I've been in my role here now at SAMA in this position. I started in January of 2014. So although I haven't been here as long as Erwin, he still has more hair than I do. So not sure what that means. So it's great to be here today to give you an update on what happened in the Assessment Service Division in 2020 and to give you an update on where we are the first 3.5 months into 2021. I guess some of the services that assessment services provide, I can sum them up in 4 main projects. The first one is annual maintenance. And that's when we get lists from you, our clients, every year of new construction, changes, renovations, removals. That's something we do on a yearly basis. And it's in order to keep the current inventory up to date and make sure that the system is fair and equitable. So as things are added or removed from the assessment rolls, it just makes the system more fair. Re-inspections is another one of our major functions, and that's when we go into a jurisdiction and either do a check of some of the properties in the municipality or all of the properties in the municipality, so that as of a point in time, we know we've got the inventory up to date in that municipality. And both Erwin and Myron had alluded to our re-inspections. We did a number of those last year, and I'll touch on that as well. Revaluations is another big function that we provide to you, our clients, once every 4 years. And of course, revaluation consists of a large number of different things. We do sales verification, we do market analysis, and then we have to implement our models that we've developed. So that's a major significant undertaking that happens every 4 years in the province. And then supportive value. We provide supportive value services, which are property appeals. And every property owner has a right to appeal their assessment every year. So we can't take a year off. When appeals happen, we have to deal with them. There's 3 typical things that happen in appeals. If there is an error on the property and an appeal has been launched and we see there's been an error, or the property owner brings an error to our attention, we can do what's called an agreement to adjust in the year when the appeal is launched. And if we're in agreement and the property owner's agreement and the municipality's in agreement, we can do what's called an agreement to adjust, make the change to the property, and the appeal is withdrawn, and then it doesn't have to go before a board of revision. The other option is take an appeal forward. If there isn't an agreement, to come up with an agreement to adjust. It goes to a board of revision, which is set up locally. Hire a board of revision. A municipality will do that. And then the appellant states their case. SAMA is usually the respondent. We would state our case, and a decision is made. And the decision could mean that that's the way we go. The option of the property owner or SAM is that we could take it to the next level, which is the Saskatchewan Municipal Board, which is a provincial level appeal board where it reviews the decision of the local board of revision. And in some cases, as Erwin had mentioned, on points of law, an appeal could be taken further to the Court of Appeal or the Court of Queen's Bench. So those are the four main projects that Assessment Services works on a yearly basis. Some SAMA statistics, Erwin mentioned, we have 757 client municipalities where we perform those programs in, about 869,000 assessed properties, and we have 8 regional offices around the province. And we have an industrial unit and a revaluation unit as well. So out of the 163 and a quarter permanent staff at SAMA, 118 and a half of them are in the Assessment Services Division. Our regions are in Melfort, Moose Jaw. In the city of Moose Jaw, we have a regional office there that looks after the assessments in the city of Moose Jaw. North Battleford, Regina, Saskatoon, Swift Current, Weyburn, and Yorkton. And as Erwin mentioned, we have an ad valorem assessment system in the province, and the foundation of an ad valorem assessment system is sales. So of course, we research the sales that are ongoing in the province at all times. And I just wanted to give you a few stats. When we talk about sales verification, sales happen, they get registered at ISC, we get those sales, and then we have to go through the sales to determine which are arm's length, which are non-arm's length, and which sales do we want to use in our valuation models. So just to give you some stats based on past revaluations, so going back to the 2013 revaluation, we typically look at the 4 years of sales leading up to the base date of that revaluation. And from January 1st of 2007 to December 31st of 2010, in our jurisdictions, there were about 203,000 sales. As we moved into the 2017 revaluation, the next 4-year base period, we had about 215,000 sales. So an increase in sales levels. And if you can remember back in 2013, 2014, there was a significant period of growth in the province there over that couple of years, and it seemed to lead to more sales transactions. For the revaluation that we're implementing this year, the 4-year base period that we used to develop our models on, we saw a reduction in sales, about 197,000 total sales. So ideally, we'd like to see more sales because that helps us build better evaluation models if we have more indicators of sales. But again, we can value properties. It's just interesting to see the trends. And as we move forward to the next revaluation, which is 2025, I know we're just implementing the 2021, but we're already over 2 years in for the sales that we'll be using for that revaluation, about 98,000 sales as the end of March. So if we track on that level, that'll be about 175,000 sales in that 4-year base period. So maybe a bit of a reduction in sales even from the 2021 reval. Of the 50,000 sales per year that we get, it was only about 15 to 20,000 of them that we would consider or that we find are arm's length transactions. So that would be like me to you, not me to my brother, or me to my father, or my father to me. We want to weed those sales out and just use arm's length transactions. So I'd show you a few stats on how many sales we're dealing with on a yearly basis. Appeals, as I mentioned before, I just wanted to show you some slides sort of, and I know Myron touched on the level of appeals. And what I'm showing here is just the years are across the bottom, and the lighter blue color are the actual years. The darker blue color bar beside the light blue bars is 4 years prior. So this, if you go over to the far right, 2014, if the dark blue bar in that example would be 2010. So 2010, 2011, 2012, typically in our jurisdictions, we were handling at the border revision level less than 1,000 appeals. And then the middle dark blue bar under the 2017, which actually the dark blue was 2013, that was a revaluation year. We had 4,300 appeals that year. And then in 2014, over to the far right, the light blue, we dropped back down into about 1,400, then 2015, 2016. And then in 2017, which was our highest appeal levels, in the last number of years, 7,200 appeals. And then in year 2, which was 2018, we dropped back down to about 2,500, 2019 and 2020, 2,000 appeals. So the trend is more appeals in a revaluation year, and then less appeals in years 2, 3, and 4. But if you go from 2013 to 2017, we saw an increase in appeals in that cycle. If I look at 2019 and 2020, which is year 3 and 4 of this most recent cycle, and go back 4 years, it looks like we're kind of leveling off in years 3 and 4 of around 2,000 appeals per year in our jurisdictions. One thing of significance, we track our time spent on appeals because they do happen every year, and we like to build that into our plans. An appeal typically takes 1 day. So if there's 2,000 appeals, it's 2,000 person days. If there was the 7,200 appeals we did in 2017, took 7,200 person days. So that takes time away from our other programs like re-inspections and maintenance and to work on the revaluations. So just thought I'd show you some of the stats there in terms of total level of appeals. And that's at the border revision level, the first level of appeal. As we move into the second level of appeals, which is at the Saskatchewan Municipal Board, that's the SMB up above, I'm just showing the same type of a slide. The years are across the bottom. The darker blue bars are 4 years prior. So in 2010, which would be on your far right, 2010, 11, and 12, typically we would get 20 to 25 appeals at the SMB in any given year. And in 2013, which would be the middle bar, the dark blue bar, that bumped up to about 75. And then 2014, 15, similar. And then in 2016, 17, 18, we saw an increase in appeals. There was more appeals happening. There was more of a backlog at the SMB. You know, it could be that an appeal wasn't heard in the year that it occurred and it got deferred to a future year. So then the property owner may have appealed it again. But we culminated in 2018 with 285 individual actions at the SMB. In 2019, that dropped back down to about 150. And in 2020, we were around 70. So, but still there's a number of appeals, as Erwin mentioned, at the Court of Appeal level that are in the 2017, 18, 19, and 20 roll years. So it's not like these have all been dealt with. So that's something that we have to work on going forward. Even though we're moving into 2021 right now, when those appeals come up at the SMB to be heard, our appraisers have to go back and maybe think back 3-4 years in time and look at our models that we were implementing at that time and try to support those property values. Our most significant achievement last year in ASD was focusing on and realizing the vision of our goal of property inspections. And I know both Myron and Erwin commented on this, and our goal last year was 110,000 property reviews. 2020 was quite a year, just from the changes that occurred with COVID and that, but we had a very successful year on the property review side, and this is our re-inspections and maintenance at 117,231. So very proud of the staff for accomplishing that. And of course, what that does, as Myron mentioned, it allows us to get out and look at more properties to make the system more fair and equitable. This slide is much like what Myron showed you, and I guess it was just to show the growth. It is a significant amount of growth since 2019 or 2013 as we moved through the process. And of course, the first year that we wanted to achieve 100,000 inspections was 2018. And in the last 3 years prior or since then, we've been able to do that. The re-inspections that we did last year that are going on roll in 2021, 87,000 properties. And where were they? We did 40,000 properties and 24 RMs. In my 32 years at SAMA, I don't think we've ever implemented the re-inspections in 24 RMs in a year. There were a lot of years we did very few RM re-inspections, or maybe 1 per region, which would mean 7 RMs. So in order to hit a 12-year cycle, we need to be doing 22 to 24 RMs to get through the whole inventory of RMs. On the commercial side, we did inspections on 1,939 properties, residential 22,000, and that could be residential in urban municipalities or resort communities. And industrial unit had a very good year on inspections as well. And our plans for 2021, we're putting in place the reval and dealing with appeals, but we also have plans to be doing re-inspections this year as well. Some reval years in the past, we did very few re-inspections due to just working on appeals all the time, but we have plans in place to do a number of re-inspections this year as well. 22 RMs on the ag side, similar commercial residential as last year, and then industrial doing their inspections as well. So just a graphic view of just looking at re-inspections of the 4 types. Commercial is the smaller bars, residential are the light blue, the ags are green, and the industrials are the dark blue, and just the progression from 2017 up to 2020, and then what we have planned for 2021. And then adding in the maintenance is how we get up to our totals of 110,000 in that neighborhood. Maintenance. One thing I'd like to talk about, and Myron alluded to on-time delivery of maintenance and how 2017 was not a good year for us in terms of delivering the reval in that year and the maintenance. We were delayed and only achieved 18% of on-time maintenance delivery. In 2020, and there was a focus in after that in 2018, 19, and 20 and ongoing to try to achieve 85% on-time maintenance delivery and 95% within 3 weeks. And in 2020, which was maintenance last year, what we delivered for the 2020 roll, we did achieve those targets. Ideally, I'd like to be at 100%, but we did deliver last year in 2020 based on what our goals were. As we move now into 2021, which is reval delivery and maintenance delivery as well, because it's a reval year, we aren't hitting our goals. And Erwin mentioned that, Myron mentioned that. We're at right now, 66% of our clients have received their maintenance by their requested date and 77% within 3 weeks. So that's not where we want to be. It's an area we have to focus on. We were improving in the non-reval years, but this year we've fallen short. So just to give you an idea what we've delivered out of our 757 clients, 653 have been delivered in our municipalities. So 86% of our clients have their reval numbers and their maintenance. So that leaves about 104 municipalities left. And so even for those municipalities that got their maintenance late this year or their reval numbers, and for those that haven't got them yet, I apologize. There are some municipalities that have later delivery dates in April, and we will hit those delivery dates, but there are a number of municipalities we know we didn't hit the mark. So it's something we really have to have a look at. Even though our reinspection numbers were high, we got to figure out that mix so that we can still do our reinspection numbers and get our maintenance delivered on time. So that's a huge priority for us going forward. We were starting to figure out in our non-reval years, but these reval years are tough, and we got to figure out for the next reval, we got to figure out how we can deliver on time, reval and maintenance. So I just wanted to bring that to our attention. The one region, not every region is complete on maintenance. The North Battleford region was our furthest behind. There right now we've delivered about 65% of their units. So 62 of the 95 have been delivered. And about 3 weeks ago, as staff started coming available, we started moving some staff either working remotely or boots on the ground from other regions going into the North Battleford region to help them get their reval and maintenance done. And we'll continue to do that until we get it all delivered. So that's just wanted to give you an update on that. With regard to the reval, of course, last fall, we got the percentages of value from government relations in December. Erwin went over the percentage changes. Of course, the big one was moving commercial, industrial, elevator, railway, resource, and pipeline from 100 to 85%, with the other percentage of value staying where they were. We recalculated our 2021 database with those new percentages back in December. And then it's been a validation of those values. And as the reval numbers are completed and maintenance is done in municipalities, we then ship them out. And that's been happening ongoing since January. We're continuing to work on maintenance. And for RMs, we're helping with the 293 exemptions as well. And we can do one of two things. We can add them into your initial package, or we can do them as maintenance. And what a 293 exemption is, it's applied to farm residences or residences in RMs if the occupant has land, owns, rents, or leases land. And that has to change every 4 years when we do a reval, because the land values change and the buildings values change. So it has to get reapplied every 4 years. So it's a significant amount of effort in a reval year that all the administrators have to do in RMs. We also will be continuing to finalize our maintenance and deliver, and then all the roles will be hopefully open at a point in time. One other thing we do in the revaluation is, and we will attend if possible, due to, right now, even in, for example, the Regina area, we can't leave the district or the area, and we will virtually attend any council meeting. If we can help do it with Zoom or Teams, any open houses. And what an open house is when we could actually, usually what we do, we sit down face to face with a ratepayer and we actually go over their assessment with them. We set up appointments. We usually go to the municipality and we meet with them. But in this case, we could do Teams or that type of a thing and do appointments remotely. Ongoing phone support. We do have 1-800 numbers for inquiries. And of course, we'll be doing our support of value as part of our service this year. The roll status in our 757 municipalities as of April 5th. There were 8 rolls closed, 359 roles open and 390 not yet open, but that's changing daily as municipalities get their roles prepared and get open. And we do already have some appeals. I think we have about 118 or 19 appeals in our jurisdictions so far. This year we're targeting about 6,600 appeals. That's an estimate. If we looked at the 2013 reval, we had 4,300 appeals, and we looked at the 2017 reval with 7,200, and we made some adjustments. We figure around probably 5,600 appeals this year. We'll see how close we are on that estimate. Information sources at SAMA, of course, there's our SAMA website. It's a great place to refer to. There's lots of online manuals, handbooks, FAQs, there's pamphlets and fact sheets. There's a good video on property assessment there. And then our SAMA View website, where property owners can look at their assessment online or their neighbors and see how different properties are assessed close to them. So with that, it brings me to the end of my presentation. So thank you. And as we move forward, now is the time for Mr. Matthew Ratch, our Managing Director of Finance, to give the update on the financial statement. So I'll welcome Matthew.
Thank you, Todd. And as I see from my photo, it's an old photo. I've turned a lot more gray since then. And obviously that was before I was in the job I'm in now. There was no suit picture of me available at that time. But thank you, Todd. And I'm glad to be here speaking to people from all over the province of Saskatchewan. As you mentioned, I am the Managing Director of Finance here at SAMA, and I'm going to speak to our financial results from last year and talk a little bit about where the finances of SAMA are going in the immediate future. SAMA, by law, is required to be audited by a licensed chartered professional accounting firm. We do that through a competitive tendering process, and the current auditor is Deloitte. They do the audit in accordance with the accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations and under Canadian generally accepted auditing standards. This audit communicates directly with SAMA's audit committee, both before and then following the audit. And that audit committee is made up of members of SAMA's board of directors. And I am pleased to present this as a clean audit report. We received the opinion from Deloitte that the statements you will see are free from error or misstatement in their opinion. And you can find the full set of statements on pages 38 to 52 of SAMA's 2020 annual report. Looking at the revenue side for SAMA, you can see that our provincial funding remained exactly the same in 2020 as it was in 2019. It was 11.388 million. That makes up approximately 53% of SAMA's total funding. In theory, what the province is responsible for is 100% of SAMA's governance function that we provide to the province of Saskatchewan. As well, they are responsible for a portion of assessment services to recognize the fact that the education sector does generate taxes that fund education from those assessed numbers. On the municipal funding side, we had a 3% increase this year, and the total municipal funding was $8.958 million. This comes from approximately 760 invoices that are mailed out to every one of our municipal clients at the end of January each year. This represents about 42% of SAMA's funding, and these funds are used to exclusively fund SAMA's assessment services that are provided to municipalities. The miscellaneous portion, the $1.132 million, is primarily made up of the largest part of it is our third-party service agreement that we have with the City of Moose Jaw to provide their assessment services. That is approximately $660,000 for 2020. The other parts of that include the fees that we generate for our SAMA View system of approximately $200,000. And then the remainder is made up of data sales that we do and some contracted assessment services we do to First Nations or other parties besides our municipal clients. On the expenses side for SAMA, we are a professional services organization. So over 3/4 of all our expenses go to salaries and benefits, $15.6 million for 2020. And the product that SAMA produces, what we work with and what we send out the door, is primarily data. And that $1.627 million relates to our outsourced and hosted IT solutions, as well as a lot of software licensing and software maintenance fees. The remaining part, the $3.5 million, this covers the rent for our 9 different offices in the province. We have 8 regional offices and a central office. That comes to over $1 million per year. As had been previously mentioned, legal costs are one of our major expenses, in excess of $500,000, as well as staff travel, staff training, office expenses, and any other miscellaneous costs are in that category. After putting together the revenues and the expenses, SAMA ended 2020 with an unrestricted fund balance of $229,000. And in addition to that, we have reserves in excess of $4 million. With combining those, we have enough funds set aside that would keep the agency's operations running for 2.5 months, is what that represents. As Erwin had mentioned, SAMA was fortunate this year in that our revenues were not disrupted by COVID or the pandemic. We had one cost category which increased a lot. That was on our legal services side for appeals that go to the Court of Appeal, where we need professional lawyers to help us with those. That is expected to continue. Then we had 2 fortunate things happen to SAMA beyond our budget. The first was the revenues generated by the SAMA View system, which went online late in 2019, actually brought in a lot further revenue than we had expected, which was good news, approximately an extra $100,000. And then we had what we expect is a 1-year major savings adjustment to staff travel, staff training, and the hosting of meetings. We ended up saving between $400,000 and $500,000 in that category. In a normal year, our staff would be out traveling around 400,000 kilometers per year. And we saw half that this year. And in terms of hotels and per diems, those ended up being less than half. So again, we consider those a one-time adjustment. We expect those expenses will return to normal levels in the future. Now, beyond operations, we use fund accounting, which means we also have, in addition to our operations fund, we have a capital fund that you'll see a statement for in the financial statements. Just to be clear on this is not cash. This is money that is already spent. This just represents capitalized investments. Mainly, this is the intangible asset of the TI program, the enhancements that were made to the governance system. You will see that at the end of the prior year, it had a balance of just under $3.5 million. And now at the end of 2020 is just over $3 million. And that is just recognizing the depreciation of that project. Now, SAMA financially, of course, we have the goal we need to be of a good value to all our stakeholders. And so with that, we use 2 comparisons often. We want to keep track of inflation and make sure that we're not exceeding it by a great amount, but we're also a member of the Canadian Property Assessment Network. And this chart that you were looking at, we do not have the 2020 numbers available yet, so this is still the 2019. But this shows that SAMA is very competitive compared to the costs for other places in Canada. And again, this is a simple calculation. This is just the total operating expenses of each of these jurisdictions divided by the number of properties in that jurisdiction to get you the cost per property. And again, we did see a slight rise in 2020, but we still fully expect to be the best value provider in Canada. Now, looking forward rather than back to 2020, our 2018 to 2021 4-year plan, this is the final year of that, called for a maximum of 2% increases per year. And that was done with an inflation estimate back then and in line with the province's 4-year plan. We are aware with the pandemic, the inflation rate was quite a bit lower in 2020. We did have a collective bargaining agreement in place for these years where salaries and benefits were rising about 2% per year. And that is the largest expense, obviously, for SAMA. So we saw rising expenses and we asked for that funding from our stakeholders, and that's how it was funded. Now, moving beyond this 4-year plan, we are currently developing both our 2022 budget and our 22 to 2025 4-year plan. And that is going to be in line with the province, and as well is going to be done with both the input, consultation and approval of SUMA, SARM, and the province. And also, being our largest expense is salaries and benefits. The current collective bargaining agreement we have in place does expire at the end of 2021. We will go into bargaining sometime in the future, but we currently have no fixed definite increase to our salaries and benefits beyond this year. With that, we will move to the Q&A portion, and I will pass the meeting back to Erwin Blank.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And one additional point I want to mention, we normally will circulate the annual report that Matthew was referring to as soon as it's been tabled in the legislature. This year, with different protocols tied to the government's response to the COVID situation, that has not occurred yet. But as soon as our annual report, which is in the hands of the ministry now, is tabled in front of the legislature, we will send out an electronic copy of that to all municipal governments across the province, and all the attendees at this annual general meeting will receive that as a follow-up. We do have one question that came in while we were giving our presentations, and I want to start by reading or responding to that. The question is there somewhere that a municipality can get their respective heat map for assessed values? And of course, I was going through some of those heat maps. I think I covered the cities of Yorkton and Weyburn, showing some of the shifts on residential property. The short answer is yes, you should contact the regional office that provides your assessment service. I know that we have some basic assessment shift information we can draw from our internal Maddox GIS system, and we'll be able to give you a basic shift map from that system. However, if you require something of a more custom nature, that would likely have to be forwarded by our region to our central office and potentially done as a custom request. But that's possible as well, depending on what the issue is and what the need is. So please do follow up with the regional office that provides you with assessment services and ask them for a copy of it, and mention it was discussed at our annual general meeting, and that was what had been said. I know Todd will be passing that message on to the regions following this meeting. Question: how are appeals going to be handled, face-to-face or virtually? And I don't know if that's live yet or whether you can see it, but that's a question that just came in. And our response is it'll depend on where we are in the COVID situation and what the local board of revision is set up to do. Local boards of revision are established by each local municipality, and they will be establishing the protocols that they'll be following at the board of revision level. I suspect if we were going into a board of revision today in the Regina area where everything's locked down, it would be virtual. Now, if that board of revision is happening in September and we're past the stage where everyone is vaccinated and we're getting back to business as usual, there's a higher likelihood that boards of revision occurring later this year will be in a more traditional format and be face-to-face. But if virtual is working for certain types of boards of revision, my guess is that will become an alternative more than it has been in the past, even after the COVID situation. But again, that's more a function of what the local board of revision, the local municipality sets up for their own board of revision. We will do our best to accommodate. Obviously, we want to keep our staff safe and the public safe through the process, but we'll do our best to accommodate the wishes of the clients that we serve. There's one question just came up. I'm a new Regina public school trustee. You stated that Regina does its own assessments and not through SAMA, although they follow the same standards. Where would I look for the most updated results for Regina? The city of Regina actually has a very good website with assessment information. I would go to the City of Regina website, look at the assessment links that are on there, click on them, and it'll draw you into a lot of similar information to what SAMA provides for our own clients, including some GIS related images that you can look at. Another question just came up. Oh, a couple of them. Here we go. Okay. When can the municipalities in the North Battleford area expect to receive their assessments? And this is one I might turn the floor over to Todd. Do you want to handle this? Yeah, okay, well, I'll respond on that one quickly then. Yeah, the good news is in the last number of weeks, we've really picked up the pace in the North Battleford area to get the assessments out. I would suggest that for a specific municipality, you contact our regional manager in North Battleford, and that is Chandra. So please do give Chandra a call in our regional office, North Battleford Regional Office, to get a specific date for any particular municipality. Our objective is to get them all out here in the next few weeks so that I know a number of our clients wanted them in April, and we're doing our best to, we've been late on the earlier ones, but we want to do our best to deliver to the April deadline clients here. So please contact Chandra in their North Battleford office for the specifics for any individual municipality there. I think we're down to the last third in that region now, are we? So, yeah. Okay. Is there a way of changing the revaluation year that does not coincide after municipal elections? And that is the year of the revaluation, and the 4-year cycle is set in legislation that is administered by the Ministry of Government Relations. So in order to change the revaluation cycle, the short answer is yes, but it would require a change in provincial legislation in order to do that only the government has the authority to do. And whether it was to extend one cycle to a 5-year cycle or to shorten the cycle to a 3-year cycle to get it off of the municipal cycle, that would be one alternative. In fairness, our 4-year cycle has been in place since 1997, and I know the municipal cycle has been changing around us over that period of time. But that is, if there was enough impetus through SUMA and SARM lobbying for that and going through, to the ministry with that, and certainly it's something that come up through our advisory committees as well for any rural or urban members on the advisory committees. If there's enough of an interest in that and they bring it forward, we get some traction, and the minister decides, yes, there's enough support to carry this forward as a legislative change, that's the way that would happen. Okay, next question from the Resort Village of Coteau Beach, and my apologies, I haven't been naming the folks who are bringing the questions forward. The property classes do not seem to reflect residential property assessment within resort villages. Is SAMA considering possibly adding a class of assessment specific to resort-based municipalities? And this is one I'm not certain what's being asked here. I know residential in resort areas are essentially properties. These are buildings that are built for year-round occupancy potentially, and they're built to the similar standard to how you would see residential properties outside of a resort village. And we will assess them by the same standard we do residential properties in any jurisdiction. We look at that local market and say, what are those properties selling for? And we'll determine a market adjustment factor that will adjust our costs and add to the land value, try to get those assessments to have a one-to-one relationship with what other residences are selling for. But again, if there's something specific in this resort village that perhaps is causing an issue, maybe how we've set up our stratifications or our neighborhood, I'd ask that you please do contact the local region and ask about that. We are not planning on adding a new class of assessments, but we have the ability to stratify and break down our market neighborhoods in whatever way best matches what the market is telling us. So there's a fair bit of flexibility there that we can work within the existing classes on. That's the end of the questions. Unless there's any other questions that anyone has, I'd like to thank you very much for bringing those questions forward. And we'll move on to the next part of the presentation. Okay, let me just see here. If I can click past this, perhaps not. I think I'm going to need one of our technical people to come and pull the panel off of our screen so we can start to move our slides forward. Thank you for those questions, everyone. We really appreciate that opportunity to respond. Any follow-up questions after the meeting that you have, feel free to send them in to us in central office, or if it's something specific to a municipality, send it directly to the region that is in charge of providing your assessed values to you. Okay. This takes us to the resolution section. And as I go through the explanation of the one resolution we've received from the RM of McKillop, I would ask that Gary Dixon, who's going to be speaking to the resolution and formally moving the resolution, that he raise his hand so our technical folks can identify him and unmute his microphone once we're at the point where it'll be time for him to speak to the resolution. So again, a little bit of background about how the resolution is going to be handled. We are going to start by, the next slide will show the actual resolution itself. I will read off the full context of the resolution. We only have one, so we'll take the opportunity to read all the whereas clauses and then what the resolution is asking for. Then we will open the floor to Gary, Mr. Dixon, to speak to the resolution, provide additional background as he may see fit, and to officially move it. Then we'll open the floor for anyone else who wants to make any comments regarding the resolution. We did circulate a copy of the resolution with the background material, including a SAMA backgrounder with some other information related to this resolution. Once we've gone through the process of discussion and debate, and again, the way we will handle this is it'll be on a first come, first served basis for people that want to speak. You can choose to raise your hand or type into the Q&A function your comments, and we will try to get to them as in the order that we see them. And again, if you're speaking, a maximum of 3 minutes per individual speaking. We won't have a timer clock up. What we will have is one of our technical folks will be monitoring the time. And when you get to the last 30 seconds, he will speak into the microphone and just say 30 seconds left. So you know you've got 30 seconds left to wrap up your comments. At the end of 3 minutes, our technical background person has the instructions, time to mute the individual after 3 minutes. So those are the rules we'll do. And anyone will be able to come back to the mic once for a second round if they choose to, maximum of 2 times for any individual. And when the conversation is done, the discussion is done about the resolution, we'll call the question. And or if Gary gets up to speak the second time, provided that there's no one else in the queue, that will close the discussion. So you can see when that happens, we're going to be using that election buddy application, and we will be sending out an email to all the registered voting delegates. You will get a copy of this application through an email, and you'll be asked to click on the link that is in that email message and then select your response. It's a pretty straightforward process in this case. Do you support the resolution? Do you not support the resolution? And then confirm you'll get a second chance to confirm after you've clicked the button and said yes. It'll say, is this what you want to vote? And then you click it again, and it's off to the folks who are tabulating the votes. We will be receiving those responses immediately after you've said yes and confirmed that. But we want to give 10 minutes to allow people time to make sure you work through the application. If you want to give a little bit of thought about the resolution, which way you want to vote on it. And at the end of 10 minutes, we'll come back and we'll indicate what occurred with the resolution and any follow-up that will be coming after that based on the decision that we've received through the resolution. And then we'll turn the floor over to Myron to make a few closing comments. And that'll be the end of our session here. So with that, I'll move right into the resolution here. This is the resolution that we've gotten from the RM of McKillop. And to read it, taking it from the top, whereas rural municipalities by bylaw can subdivide land to allow private campgrounds to be a commercial land use. And whereas commercial property and land in rural municipalities are assessed significantly lower than in urban municipalities. Whereas there is no separate classification for campgrounds, and so they are placed into the commercial and industrial classification, resulting in assessments as other commercial property and land. Whereas currently, campgrounds are assessed as unregulated. Unregulated assessments use 3 approaches: the sales comparison approach, the cost approach, and the income approach. Whereas sales of private campgrounds are not an active sales market, resulting in not enough sales to substantiate an accurate or valid assessment. Whereas campground development costs are low, and much of the development is the responsibility of the lease or permit holder. Many developers use already developed facilities. Whereas the approach for estimated market value assessments are based on the present worth of anticipated income, income-producing properties are bought and sold based on their income potential. The income approach converts this income into an estimate of present value. Whereas the income (residential) approach is appropriate for campground assessment, as the value of the property is directly related to the income it will generate. Therefore, be it resolved that SAMA amend the market value assessment in Saskatchewan handbook to include the use of the income approach to value campgrounds. There you have it. That is the resolution in front of you. And if Gary has been identified and unmuted, Gary, you are more than welcome to officially propose the resolution and speak to it. And if you're speaking, you are muted on your end, Gary.
No, I'm not speaking yet. I think I'm okay.
Okay, perfect. Welcome.
Well, first of all, thank you, Erwin, and the rest of the board of directors for putting on this AGM today. And I'd also like to thank the appeal, the resolution board for accepting this. And also like to thank Sean for his help on amending this somewhat. I think the resolution speaks quite a bit to itself. However, I would like to refer to section 2 of the market value assessment handbook and some of the comments that are in that handbook. First of all, it says the income approach yields, just get my notes here. Oh, the income approach yields a reliable indicator of value subject to adequate sales. Manufactured home communities owners should be able to provide the assessor with the information necessary to carry out a market value based assessment using the income approach to value. Mobile home parks, trailer camps, are bought and sold on the basis of the level of income they are able to generate, and not just the land and the buildings on it. The income approach applies well in a mass appraisal environment. Under recommendation, and this is out of the handbook, the income approach is recommended for the evaluation at manufactured home communities for assessment purposes. In order of priority, the sales, comparisons, or the cost approach can be used if there is not sufficient data to use the income approach. So in closing, I'd just like to say that I think that campgrounds, or as they're assessed on SamaView, our mobile home parks, definitely need to be used as the income approach. I think the council realizes that there are development costs, and possibly the first few years, the income approach would be low for taxation. However, in subsequent years, when very little development is done in these campgrounds, they are fully developed, there is a huge income by the campground owner. Most campgrounds throughout the province charge $2,600 to $3,000 per year per lot. So if you have a campground of, say, 200,000 campsites, that is essentially an income of near $600,000.
30 seconds.
And so I think the income approach should be considered. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate you bringing that resolution formally forward to the group, and the reference to our market value assessment handbook, which is the guide. It doesn't have the force of law, but it is the guide that is established to provide some overall direction on things that our assessment appraisals can consider when they're valuing those kind of properties. And as Gary said, that's in the current valuation guide, what he's recognized there. So again, unless there's any comments or further questions, maybe people are unsure about some aspects of what's being asked for. We'd be happy to answer any questions, but I'm hesitant to lead the discussion in too proactive a way here in this one. So we're certainly open for any comments that any other individuals may have related to this resolution, and happy to answer any questions through the process. Are there any other folks with their hand up? And I'll call over to our technical folks, or anyone who's typed into the Q&A session regarding this resolution.
We have from Sunset Cove, Tom Fulcher. You can unmute yourself now.
Hello, Tom. Tom, you're welcome to speak at your convenience. And you're still muted if you are speaking.
Am I coming through now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Great. Sorry, some technical difficulties here. Okay, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak on why we're opposed to this resolution and why we see no need to change the current situation. I first want to just provide some background on this, then I'll get into the specifics. A developer recently applied to build a large trailer park development along the shores of Last Mountain Lake in the arm of McKillop. This was a huge development with approximately 250 lots built over an area of 130 acres. And this development was to be built in some of the most pristine, beautiful hillsides surrounding Last Mountain Lake. There was considerable opposition to this proposed development by the neighboring farmers, the ratepayers, two nearby rural communities, the adjoining RM, and by two environmental stewardship groups, being the Watershed, Saskatchewan Association of Watersheds, and the Last Mountain Lake Stewardship Group. They were concerned about the impact of water quality of Last Mountain Lake and the damage to the riparian area caused by this community of approximately 1,000 people. So after receiving these challenges, the RM recognized that this development was contrary to their own zoning bylaws, and they denied this development application. So the neighboring communities and all the stakeholders were led to believe that this was the end of the process. However, it was discovered recently that the RM and McKillop had undertaken a review of their zoning bylaws and also submitted this resolution, or this current resolution, before SAMA, wanting to change SAMA's taxation process on these trailer park developments. It's clearly recognized that this resolution is passed by the members here and then subsequently adopted by SAMA's board of director and other government agencies. It would create a situation where RMs could then now generate additional tax dollars by approving establishments of trailer parks in their jurisdiction. I surmise from all this that some RMs could be more motivated by financial considerations than by community values or community concerns. Now, I've been the mayor or council of our small resort village for the last 15 to 20 years, and I fully understand the desire and the need to increase, revenue.
30
However,
seconds.
recognizing these impacts have on rural Saskatchewan and the need to protect our environment is equally, if not arguably, more important. To sum up, I'm concerned that if it becomes financially lucrative for RMs to allow trailer park developments, this may soon become the predominant decision-making factor for some RM. My vision of Saskatchewan is not one where large trailer park developments consume and dot our beautiful landscape. I respectfully request that those in attendance today recognize these concerns and vote against this resolution. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate the feedback. We've got a couple of folks who went into the Q&A and provided some comments or questions. The first one is the overall change to increase taxes, or will it result in less taxes? And of course, taxes, we don't know, but I think you're referring to the assessment. Would the assessment of these properties go up as a result of the application of the rental income approach, or would it go down? And our objective, regardless of the approach we use, whether we're using the cost approach, the sales comparison approach, or the rental income approach, we're still going after the same target. We're just getting to the target using different types of information and in different ways. So currently today, because we don't often have a lot of rental income information for campgrounds or a lot of mobile home parks, we default to utilizing the cost approach in the absence of enough information to apply the rental income approach. So we can apply it today, and regardless of the verbiage of what's in the market value handbook, we're subject to the reality of the situation. So bottom line is the overall change in assessments shouldn't be that radical, but if you have a campground that is sold out completely with no vacancy, I suspect there is a likelihood that over time that the income approach would show a higher value than what the cost approach would. Whereas if you have a campground that has a very high vacancy rate and it's in a category that has very high vacancy rates, that the assessments for those could go down as a result of the application of the income approach. And the reason the income approach is often used in commercial areas where there's active lease and rental markets is because it does provide a more accurate reflection of the state of that property market for those types of properties, whether that state is down or up. So our objective, of course, would be to try to get the most accurate value. So again, it's kind of a political answer, but in terms of whether the assessment would go up or down, would depend on what's happening in that local marketplace. And again, the option to use that approach is there for us today, has been since 2009. So would this resolution included campgrounds that are owned by the town itself or just privately owned campgrounds? And normally when we apply the rental income approach, we're not as the ownership is less relevant to us as the fact that this is a similar group of properties that are all rented. And so we would, if we're applying that approach in that jurisdiction based on available rental and expense information, sales information, we would apply it to any similar campgrounds within that area. Now, the ones that are municipal owned, I don't know if the community has exempted that campground or not, but the assessment process that we would follow would be similar, whether it was privately owned or owned by the town itself. Are there any other questions or comments related to this resolution? There's no open questions we see on the chat line. Does anyone have their hand up for any follow-up rebuttal response? Or can we call the question? Well, there is one coming, my tech folks tell me, so I'll wait for it to show up.
Currently no hands that are raised. Oh, sorry about that. Just there is Sherry Jimmy from
Sherry.
Say you're able to unmute yourself now.
Welcome, Sherry.
Welcome and good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Better unmute. Yeah, we can hear you, Sherry.
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to this resolution. In our rural municipality, we have a couple of campground areas and over the years, based on the assessment process, these campgrounds have had rather dramatic increases in both assessment and taxation as a result, and are the result of appeals most recently. In our thinking, and our council reviewed this yesterday, this resolution might actually be of benefit to the developer in the sense that assessment would more accurately be reflected based on income, which then allows council the ability to apply tax tools that would impact taxation, likely downward, particularly in down times. So the reality here is that when the oil industry goes down, these campgrounds are essentially empty, yet the infrastructure and everything has been put in place. So we discussed the fact that this may be actually beneficial and should support this resolution for that purpose.
Thank you, Sherry. Are there any further comments? Appreciate that feedback.
Next is just Gary Dixon with his hand up.
Gary, to close the discussion, please go ahead, Gary.
Yes, I would just like to assure the first speaker after me that this resolution had nothing to do with the new proposed campground. It was developed because we have previous campgrounds in the RM and nothing to do with the new proposed one on Last Mountain Lake. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. And as Gary was speaking and opened the resolutions, that closes the resolution. So we will now call the question. And so if you folks are registered as a voting delegate, you can expect to receive an email message shortly. And let me just see if we've got, I think that we'll just stay on this screen, shall we, Peter? All right, just looking here. Yeah, we are golden. Okay. So then, as we mentioned before, you will have 10 minutes in order to vote. Once you get the email from Election Buddy and have an opportunity to look at the resolution, click on that link, make your choice, and send it in. In 10 minutes, we will reconvene and provide the results to the resolution. So for those folks who have been soldiering through with us without a break, this is your opportunity after you've done your voting to just take a short break, and in 10 minutes we'll be coming back and giving you the results of the voting on the resolution, and our board chair Myron Knaffel will then provide some closing comments for the group. So thank you for your time. The next 10 minutes are yours to make up your mind on this resolution. Thanks. See you in 10. So we're just waiting for the results to be shared on the screen, folks. So just bear with us as they tabulate the results. We wanted to make sure that if any votes came in just in the last few seconds, that we included those in whatever the count is. So hopefully in the next few seconds, we're going to see what the results are. So please do bear with us. Once we get those results, I'll be turning the floor over to Myron to make some closing comments. But just before we do, I do want to thank all of you who have joined us today. We had a very good turnout for today's meeting, and we really do appreciate the interest that you have in your assessment organization in SAMA, and we appreciate the privilege of being able to serve all of you and provide the assessment service that we do. So thank you for your interaction, and for those, I know a number of you are also on some of our advisory committees, and thank you for your support there as well. We do appreciate the extra effort that all of you put in to assist us as we develop new policies. And depending on how this resolution goes, we may have another item that'll be coming forward to the advisory committees following this, but we'll look to see what the results of this resolution is. And we are still waiting, I believe. It's based on what I see on my screen. I think we're getting a different view. Here we have it. Okay, it looks like the vote went in favor of the motion. As you can see by the chart that is in front of you, roughly about just under 3/4 of the attendees voted in favor of the motion. So the motion passes. What that means is that the SAMA board will be reviewing the resolution at the next board meeting and making a decision about the action steps that need to be taken. As we've mentioned in our background report, the most likely outcome will be some proposed changes to the verbiage in the market value handbook, simply to make it more clear that campgrounds are included along with mobile home parks, which they always have been, as we've interpreted, but it will make it more explicit. At that point, though, it won't automatically be put into the handbook. Anytime we make a policy change to any of our guides or handbooks, they will go through our advisory committees before they're formally approved by the board of directors. So the next step will be for this resolution and any proposed amendments to the market value handbook to go to our rural, our urban, our city, and our commercial advisory committees at the November meetings. And if they approve the change as well, it'll go back to the board immediately after that meeting, and pending board approval, we will make the formal change to the market value assessment handbook to reflect the resolution. Further details of that will be forthcoming after our next board meeting, which is scheduled for I believe it's mid-May is the next time we're getting together for a full face-to-face meeting. So we'll be communicating the results of this resolution to all attendees formally immediately after this meeting, and then follow-up action items will be described after the May board meeting. So with that, again, thank you very much to all of you for your support of the overall organization and your attendance and joining us today. And I don't know if Myron has unmuted himself, but I'm going to turn the floor over to Myron for his closing comments. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Erwin. I hope this format worked for everyone this afternoon. And in closing, I'd like to thank Erwin and the entire management team and all of the staff at SAMA for what has been, I feel, a very difficult year in 2020. We started out working at the office, and then we went from working at home and then back to the office and then back at home. And for any of you that have had that experience, you know perfectly well how difficult that can be. I'd also like to thank my board of directors, all of the advisory committee members, and our partners in SUMA, SARM, and the government. And I know every one of us are getting a little tired of talking to each other through these screens, and it'll be just great when we can all look in our rearview mirror and see COVID was a thing of the past, and we can go ahead and meet in person again. I think everybody's looking forward to that. So thank you, all of you, for joining us today. And please stay safe and healthy. And we hope to see you all face to face in 2022. Thank you. Bye for now.